In the last segment of this series, I discussed a man by the name of Pulitzer, and the supposed Roman sword found near Oak Island. Pulitzer, according to my research and his own words, was one of the main guys surrounding the program, The Curse of Oak Island on the History Channel. However, this is not the case. Pulitzer was called in by the crew on the island to look into the authenticity of the sword. The sword has now been proven fake, and Pulitzer relied due to his constant changing of stories, and the History Channel's clear reluctance to have the sword tested. This shown a clear guilt, and aroused suspicions from diligent fans. Suspicions that have now been justified. When confronted with these facts, you have to wonder if the History Channel has the public's best interests at heart anymore, or indeed, if they ever did. According to the tests run by professors in Halifax, they felt the sword was not authentic. According to those experts, the type of casting and the metallurgical makeup of the sword pointed more toward something made in the 1940s. They said the metallurgy of the brass did not match the brass of the Roman era. There is also a huge catch. And when you take into account the deceit that has already been displayed, you will wonder whether it has affected the information conveyed to the public. Ricky and Martin from The Curse of the Oak Island show have invested $7 million into the site they are investigating. If they were to reveal an important historical site, for example a Roman longboat, or ancient burials of any type, the sites and the land would pay them back exactly nothing. It would be protected and not valued at anything on the financial market. So even if they would have found treasure, they wouldn't have seen a penny of their investment from the land they have bought. For us, however, Oak Island means more than just money. Of course a treasure is what we seek, but we seek it because we feel that it is there. Lying in the mud somewhere, with moments when it feels like it may never be found. And if we give up, that will be a reality. Whoever hid this treasure, whatever it may be, was much smarter than we have clearly gave them credit for. This realization is what has begun our next chapter of the story. We are leaving Oak Island, we are beginning another phase of our journey. In the finale of The Curse of Oak Island, they used sonar to determine that there is indeed right angles and a possible pair of tunnels leading away from the pit. The thing that has been missed, however, is that whoever created the booby traps did indeed create massive underground structures for the flooding to occur, a clue to their methods of hiding treasure perhaps. We have to admit that while in amazement at the feats undertaken to create the trap that we have been aware of for centuries, we have been reluctant to give the creators of the pit even more credit by suspecting the flood channels be only a small portion of the underground structures. This is exactly what Keith Ranville among others have speculated about Oak Island. That is, that Oak Island's money pit is actually the entrance to an underground and undersea network of tunnels connecting the islands. Maybe all of the islands. And there is growing evidence to back up such an hypothesis, making the stone tablet a key to directions to the treasure through the network of booby trap tunnels. James Litchie, a professor of languages at Dalhousie University, initially decoded the symbols on the tablet found at 90 foot and came up with a translation that said, 40 feet below 2 million pounds are buried. However, Keith Ranville has possibly stumbled upon a new meaning of the symbols, due to his knowledge of his own ancestry and ancient map-making. He states, I believe these symbols have been incorrectly assumed to stand for something else. In the First Nations tradition that I'm a part of, we believe symbols should simply be looked at in and of themselves, rather than thinking of them as codes that have to be cracked, he continues. In the pictograms of chrysolabics, for example, the images are meant to be descriptive, not abstract. Using this approach, Mr. Ranville examined the Oak Island symbols and found what may be a set of instructions about a tunnel system involving both Oak Island and nearby Birch Island. A supporting factor of his theory that the original interpretation is incorrect is that the stone was found at 90 feet, and supposedly stated that the 2 million pounds lay 40 feet below, which would have meant that the treasure would have been found at around the 130-foot mark. However, the excavations have gone as deep as 157 feet. At which point the second flood tunnel leading in from the south shore made further excavation impossible. but is it a flood channel? We will come back to that. Mr. Anvil used pictures of the stone to decipher its series of shapes, lines and dots to reveal a new translation that reads more like a map. If you read Mr. Anvil's code and follow it, it leads you off Oak Island, the site of all the treasure hunting for the past 211 years, under the water of the bay and onto the neighboring Birch Island via man-made shafts. He states, "The instructions at the bottom of the pit tell you about where and how to locate these shafts, and I believe they're in Mahone Bay." He believes the two islands are connected by these shafts. He said that aerial shots of Birch Island proved the island has been touched by human hands. These aerial shots of the 16-acre Birch Island do show a large triangle which takes up a good portion of the island landscape. He continues to explain his steps going forward. "What I want to do is investigate this island where I think these symbols lead to." He has contacted the owner of Birch Island, Christopher Ondaragi, to inquire about doing some soil testing and exploring on the island. In addition to being the home of the famous treasure, Mr. Anvil believes Birch Island may also be an ancient burial site for those who were involved in the original treasure hiding scheme. Add to this the evidence brought forward by a recent geological survey, which proves sea levels are 45 feet higher than they were in the past. Sinkholes and underground caverns have been found to dot the area, and it is reported that 3,000 feet from Oak Island similar shafts have been excavated with the same characteristics as the Money Pit. And large areas on the neighboring island that show clear indications of underground features due to sudden bare patches with no foliage. These factors are only just coming to light, while there has been a lot of skepticism surrounding Oak Island. These factors surfacing should help in the quest. The most common of pessimistic theories surrounding the pit is that the whole Money Pit was naturally formed, and that when the original diggers were unsuccessful, decided to create the legend to generate revenue. However, this skeptical theory has been disproven many times, the most notable being the original dye test, not the bumbling attempt done on the show. The original test used red dye instead of green that was used in the more recent attempt, and proved beyond doubt the existence of 3 flood tunnels. One hadn't even been discovered up to that point. And the possible location of more lower down. This is a clue for us going forward. I will explain how shortly. It must be noted, since the original dye test, dynamite has been used on the island to attempt to block the flood shafts, which has clearly rendered any new exploration with dye useless. This is why their recent dye test was a failure. During a 2-day period, 400,000 gallons of seawater was pumped into 10x and mixed with the dye. This is 50,000 cubic feet by volume. If the dyed water mixture never made it to shore, then where did it go? There was a sufficient capacity of known tunnels and shafts which were not previously flooded to absorb almost 50,000 cubic feet of seawater. Water did overflow from boreholes in the Hedden shaft, but we don't know how much water actually leaked out. This flooding was not observed until the 2nd day and not sufficient enough to trickle down to the south shore, so it was negligible. When pumping out of 10x or the Money Pit, the water level was lowered. In 10x this would have been to the 200 feet level, which would create a pressure differential of 100 psi at which the ocean could force through the cracks and crevices and flood the tunnels. If 10x was filled to the brim, this would only create about 17 psi of head pressure to counter the ocean. Would 17 psi be enough to force the dyed water into the ocean? We know water flowed out from boreholes around the Money Pit, therefore the system was not sealed. So how much pressure was available to force the dye into the ocean? Maybe 5 psi total. Would 5 psi have been enough to deliver the dye several hundreds of feet in only 2 days? The answer is no. It's safe to say that so far Rick and Marty have done the quest virtually no favors. If anything, all they have done is made more mess and more holes. And ultimately the show has discredited the existence of the treasure altogether. Was this their plan to start with? After all, if they were to declare a valuable historic find, they would be 7 million worse off. If Keith Ranville and others are right about the tunnels, then we should have stopped digging at the stone tablet. In all logical sense, the stone tablet was, and is, the key to unlocking the treasure. When the tablet was removed, and the digging continued, the cork traps were released. The entrance to the tunnels would logically be built into the base of the pit, with the cork plugs above, creating the entire essence of the trap. The tablet has been decoded 2 times before Anvil's attempt, with the second meaning stating, 2 tons of corn be fed into flood channel AA, to be able to continue the dig. This second translation of the tablet would now strangely make complete sense. And also the original dye tests mentioned earlier, that indicated 2 tunnels lower down than the flood shafts. Once the plugs were removed, it would make sense that the design would be such that the entire network of tunnels below become flooded by the ocean, making any attempts to retrieve the treasure on foot now impossible, and with no way to really explore them from within. If this theory is correct, we will have to piece the puzzle together, blindfolded. This leaves us at a crossroads. So what are the next steps? Firstly, we need to confirm the existence of the tunnels. And if the search is taking us off the island, the first thing will be to try to get permission to dig on and explore Birch Island and the neighboring islands. Most importantly, however, motives have to be in the right place. It cannot be about profit. The only way we will ever find out what is underneath the island is with the contribution and cooperation of all those concerned, with the correct permission every step of the way. If it was approached with a view to preserve the site and all its contents, then it could be excavated safely, and all the world would finally know the secrets that the island has been able to hold on to for so long. With new soil samples in the pipeline, and a theory that seems to be holding water, pardon the pun, it looks like Rick and Marty might want to set up before things really start to get interesting. The question we should all be asking now is, will the rest of the world now get a shot at the island? I sure hope so. As always, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next segment, where we will look closely at the evidence for the tunnels and delving into Anvil's decoding of the tablet. Could we really be on to the possible location of treasure? Leave your thoughts in the comments.